Here we have the HP Pavilion 15. This is the EG model, because HP always has these weird designation numbers at the end depending on like CPU type, where you get it from, what country, and that kind of thing. But nevertheless, this is an HP Pavilion that you can pretty much score from like Walmart, Best Buy, Amazon, these kinds of places. And we all know on this channel I am not the biggest fan of Hewlett-Packard and the typical trend of garbage they churn out, but we have one that I think might be potentially good value. That's what we're here to find out, is if this laptop is any good, and if you should buy one yourself, and if HP is still making the shittiest laptops in the world. Let me go ahead and get a few specs out of the way. This one comes with the 11th generation i5 processor, which HP claims that gives it sort of that super performing battery life that you all want, but may not necessarily get. We'll get into that in a moment. Comes with 12 gigabytes of RAM, a 512 gigabyte solid state drive, NVMe Intel Optane, and a 15.6 inch full high definition 250 nit touchscreen. Now, all of that seems really awesome on paper, but the laptop is kind of underwhelming. I'm not gonna say this is the worst laptop that you can buy, not value, not quality, anything like that. In fact, if anything, this thing, it exceeded my expectations. But let's go ahead and dive a little bit deeper into the specs here. 250 nit brightness on a display these days, especially with one as absolutely glossy as this one, wherever you are on the planet, if there is a light source shining down on you, you will get some glare in this thing. And as a result, 250 nit brightness just really wasn't quite enough to get it there. Now, for those that don't know, screen brightness ratings are in nits. It's basically, really high performing screens are about 500 nits. The sort of lower performing ones are around like 250 range. So of course, HP put a lower performing one in this entry level to sort of mid-level productivity laptop. And it is a nice screen overall. I shouldn't totally crap on it. It is better than some of the Asus screens that are out there. Not quite as nice as some of the Dell panels. The brightness is a little bit of an issue, but that said, the colors are pretty vivid. Everything is pretty clear and crisp, and the touch screen is fairly navigable. It's like it responds to your fingerprints nicely and gets it all smudgy and stuff like that. Feature-wise, a little underwhelming on it too. Wi-Fi 6 does have Bluetooth. Wi-Fi 6, for again, those that don't know, it is the fastest and newest Wi-Fi that you can get. So it's nice that HP did put this in here instead of putting like a 802.11ac card in there. But that said, it doesn't have any kind of like Windows Hello compatible camera or fingerprint reader. So if those things are important to you, you don't get them. Now, that said, Windows 11 is going to be putting a pretty big emphasis on the Windows Hello stuff, so I'm finding it a little bit shocking that actually, I'm not surprised at all, but the point is that HP didn't put that stuff in there. But here is what the webcam quality on this laptop look. And by the way, you do have to, I interrupted myself. I shouldn't have done that. There's two microphone ports at the top next to the camera, so we're gonna let's find out how good the microphone and webcam quality are. Now, here is what the webcam looks like on the HP Pavilion 15. As you can see, what do you think? Good enough for a Zoom call, Skype, talking to your best friend over in France? But with 12 gigs of RAM in this thing, it is offering you a lot of productivity horsepower. And I have to admit, the input on this thing is pretty decent too. The keyboard and the trackpad are frankly top-notch. The keyboard just feels really, really good to type on. It's sort of smooth and tactile. It's responsive. You can type really, really quick without making a lot of typos. The keys are island style and they're very, very big. Now, of course, HP, because every manufacturer is doing this for some reason, is putting silver keycaps on the keyboard, which I don't understand why people are doing that. But interestingly enough, unlike the Asus, or the Dells for that matter, the keyboard is easier to read with the backlight off than it is with the backlight on. And that was kind of interesting to figure out. When you have the backlight on the keyboard on this laptop, the keys are almost impossible to read. And I've been getting people commenting in the comments section about, well, you shouldn't need to be able to see the keyboard and, you know, just type without looking about, except you just, yeah, but you should be able to see the keys. You just need to sometimes, right? Like if you're hunting for the function key or something, it's nice to be able to see the keys. But this one does have a backlight keyboard, which is a nice little feature. It also does have the full size the full size numpad, so for those doing data entry, accountants, Excel spreadsheets, stuff like that, they're really going to love that. And the touchpad, while it's not the biggest in the world, it's not fencing with Apple by any means, it is pretty decent size, and frankly, and I like the sort of like little silver trim they did around the edges. And it's doesn't ghost a whole lot. It's got multi-gesture support, it's responsive, and it pretty much goes where you tell it to and clicks when you tell it to click, and it just sort of intuitively knows whether it's a left or a right click. I like it. It's a good trackpad. Who is this computer for? Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk about the input and output here for a moment, if you'll regale me. On this side, you have HDMI in case you need to hook it up to a projector or something like that. You have USB super speed. You have USB-C, which is a Type-C port, which is nice. This is a micro SD card, so, you know, most SD cards these days are coming in like a micro variant, especially, you know, like when you buy one, it's kind of got the little micro card that fits into the bigger sized SD thing, but it's not a full-size SD slot, so just don't expect that. And then a headphone jack for your headphones, because the speakers on this thing are atrocious. I gotta dive into that here in a moment too. On this side, another USB super speed, Kensington lock, because everybody uses that. And then of course, where you plug it in, because it doesn't run on solar energy. So, input and output on this thing is actually pretty good. I'm a little bit surprised by it, if I'm being honest. You do have two super speed ports. They didn't cheapen out on you and give you like an old USB 2 port that's on crutches and in a wheelchair because it's so old. Sorry. But it does also have USB-C in it, which is a pretty nice touch. The whole kind of theme of this laptop, I think, is for productivity people. I mean, that's really what it's geared for. What I don't like, though, is that HP sort of, and this little sticker here in the corner, they say that it has exceptional battery life in a compact format. And the thing with this laptop is that the battery life, they're advertising 10 hours. I don't know who the fuck is getting 10 hours? In every possible test that we ran on this thing, we were getting probably closer to like 4 to 5 hours. So, I mean, but that said, they think that you can get about 10 hours worth of usage on this thing. I don't really think that you can take this traveling. It is lightweight, and actually the materials are surprisingly pretty good. It's all sort of aluminum and sort of metal enclosured. It feels like a good laptop that's gonna probably last a while. And we've had an issue with HP, sorry, my microphone keeps, I gotta figure this out. And then, you know, we've had issues with HPs where the hinges break off of the LCD hinges break off of the frame of the laptop. And I don't actually think you're gonna have that problem with this particular model. By all accounts, it is a fairly well-built machine, and I think that it can take a beating, whether you are traveling or whether you're a student taking it from class to class, a business person, man or woman, taking it from desk to bag to like Portugal or wherever you're traveling to. But speakers on this thing, they advertise B&O, Bang & Olufsen speakers. Very lackluster. Really no bass in them. Bass, people. The mids get pretty distorted, and the highs are pretty decent. This is like if you needed to listen to a podcast or like vocals, maybe like radio, you could listen to that on here. It is definitely not for music playing. The music is just not gonna sound that great. You are gonna need a pair of nice headphones to plug in if you are an audiophile. I'm getting a little tired of these manufacturers like, you know, Bang & Olufsen or Bose speakers in your laptop, and like they're just not really all that good. But anyway, that's what you're left with is B&O speakers that are BO. And then of course, the other thing that you have to worry about with this laptop is HP's customer service. It is still abysmal. Their website is atrocious by comparison to some of the other manufacturers' websites. If you punch in your serial number, you also have to punch in like a product number ID and a whole bunch of other things just to get driver sets. They very, very rarely keep up with BIOS updates on this thing. It's something I've got to give Dell. Love him or hate him, Dell will release BIOS updates for an eternity. HP basically drops, they release a computer and then it's just, now it's your problem. So if it doesn't work, too bad. But that said, this computer does have some very nice user serviceability. If you pop the bottom off of the thing, you are basically left with the ability to swap out the NVMe from a 512 to a 1 or 2 terabyte if you wanted to. You can fix your own wireless card if that goes bust. It allows you to just sort of see the whole thing, motherboard and all, and swap things out, including the battery. Also, and I did double check this, the screens for this computer are available. So unlike other HP Envy machines where if you ever broke your screen, you'd be SOL. With this one, you can replace the screen, and quite easily, I might add. Basically, the bezel pops off, and you are going to want a professional to do this, but nevertheless, the bezel pops off, and it's a little bit easier to mount them in than the glass ones. So parts are a little bit more readily available for this particular Pavilion. This is the one that has the plastic bezel around the screen. It's not the full glass like Envy models. I would actually honestly say if you really must get an HP, you're probably better off getting the Pavilion series than you are getting the Envy series because you can service them post and pre-warranty, which is kind of a nice touch. But that said, yeah, I wouldn't count on HP's customer service for anything. If you were falling off the edge of the cliff, they're just gonna like look at you and go. So, do I recommend this computer? I think, yeah, sure. I still don't like HP, and I'm trying to get past the bias on that. But it's not a bad computer. I think I'd still rather have offerings from Lenovo or Dell. But if you can find a good price on this machine, and I've been finding sales on this thing anywhere between $500 to about like $800. $800 is way too much, but if you can find this thing between about $500 or $600, again, 512 gig NVMe, 12 gigs of RAM, full-size keyboard, 15.6-inch FHD screen. I think you're gonna probably enjoy it and have a good time with it. We can't really talk about reliability as far as longevity is concerned. We haven't done any sort of long-term tests or have any input from clients on them. But nevertheless, it is not as hateful as I expected it to be. Couple of little gripes I have, but otherwise it's decent. So that's that. That is the HP Pavilion. I think anybody that buys it is going to be okay with it. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us in the comment section. Please like and subscribe, because if you don't, the Italian Mafia is going to kill me and burn this studio down. And otherwise, we will be back with another video real soon.